You've probably seen this map in some of my videos recently. I use it for thumbnails occasionally, and the reason I use this map as opposed to the official map is basically just because I made it and I can modify it easily. I designed it for a Discord bot that edits it to show the places you've been. I actually use the map the bot makes as my YouTube channel banner now. However, since I made this map, and I specifically made it for my purposes, it is very editable. So because of that, I was able to take this map and turn it into this map. This map is what people in the train community call a fantasy map. It's a map of a fictional railway network. And necessarily, because I'm not a prophet, this is a fictional instance of the Victorian Railway Network. However, I made this map to attempt to be as realistic as possible for what the Victorian Railway Network could look like in late 2035, just under 10 years from now. And in today's video, I will cover exactly what I've put on this map, the Victorian railway projects that may be completed within the next 10 years. I will cover them in order of likelihood they have of opening within the next 10 years, and they will be divided into the parent projects they are each a part of. The first thing I want to cover is the tiniest thing, West Tarneit Station. Set to open this year, it is already much of the way through construction and is already on the official map made by Transport Victoria. Adding a new station between Wyndonvale and Tarneit will alleviate the pressure on those two stations at least somewhat, and this project will be completed by the end of the year. This is the only project in this video that will be completed this year, however, so let's get on to the main events. When you look at the two maps side by side, what's the first thing you see? I know! It's the Suburban Rail Loop. The Suburban Rail Loop project will deliver at least one rail project over the next 10 years, the Suburban Rail Loop East, also known as SRL East. By the way, that sentence was awful, I'm so sorry. I could have done better. SRL East will be an orbital underground rail line between Cheltenham and Box Hill, filling a role no line currently does: orbital suburban travel. It will involve the construction of 6 new stations, 4 of which interchange with existing ones, those being SRL Box Hill, SRL Glen Waverley, ignore the yellow Glen Waverley line for now by the way, SRL Clayton, and SRL Cheltenham, which interchanges with Southland Station. 2 brand new stations will also be constructed, SRL Monash and SRL Burwood. Since the name Burwood Station is already taken by a station on the Alamein line, I've elected to name the station Deakin Station on the map, as its main purpose will be to allow a railway connection to Deakin University, Burwood. SRL Monash will do the same for Monash University Clayton. The line will comprise twin underground tunnels and will contain standard gauge track as opposed to most of the Victorian Railway Network having broad gauge track. This would make it incompatible with the rest of the Victorian Railway Network if there was a connection. It will use a different overhead wire voltage and will run fully autonomous trains. All these factors combine to make the Suburban Rail Loop more like the Sydney Metro than our actual Metro tunnel. The line is estimated to open to passengers sometime in 2035, and that's the date this map is based around. Next is the Melbourne Airport Rail Link project, also known by its acronym of MARL. MARL will finally add a connection between Melbourne's railway network and its largest airport. The project is divided into 2 sections, the Melbourne Airport Railway Line and the Sunshine Superhub project. The Sunshine Superhub project is a reconfiguring of the rail corridor between West Footscray and Sunshine to allow for the airport and Melton lines. It will involve an extra track pair being built north of the existing ones, and the expansion of Sunshine Station to 6 platforms and the construction of flyovers relevant for it. The Sunbury line will be rerouted onto this new track, and will no longer stop at Tottenham Station, while the airport and Melton lines would split off the Sunbury line at West Footscray and run along the old track to Sunshine. This project will allow for the Sunbury, airport and potential Melton lines that would use the Metro tunnel to have the most access to the tunnel's capacity. Flyovers will be constructed for the interchange at West Footscray, but also are set to get V-Line trains to Bendigo from the regional rail link to the Sunbury line tracks without ever touching the inner tracks, allowing that switch to occur with the fewest conflict points between lines. The Sunshine Superhub is expected to be complete in 2030. The Melbourne Airport Railway Line is a new line that will be constructed between Sunshine and Melbourne Airport in Tullamarine. It will follow the Sunbury Line's corridor between Sunshine and Albion, where it will have no platforms. Then it will follow the Albion-Jacana line until it is directly south of the airport, when it will split off into its own corridor. It will have two stations, Melbourne Airport Station and also a station in Mildura East. It will connect to the city by running over the route emptied by the Sunshine Super Hub, stopping at Tottenham, West Footscray, Middle Footscray and Footscray before entering the Metro Tunnel and continuing to Cranbourne and Pakenham. It currently has no opening date, but could open at the same time as the Sunshine Super Hub, 2030 or later. And that is the list of projects that as of February 2026 are definitely happening. But there are others that could reasonably happen within time, some of which are speculated to even be on the list of election promises for the Victorian Labor Party's 2026 election campaign. The most likely project to be completed is some variant of the Western Rail Plan. It is divided into three sections that are likely still part of the plan, as the original plan has almost certainly been dropped and the updated version hasn't yet been released. Three sections are the Melton Line electrification, the addition of a few new stations on the Wyndon Vale Line, and the Werribee Line extension. The Melton Line electrification will take the railway line between Sunshine and Melton and bring electric suburban trains along it for the first time. A new set of tracks will be installed between Sunshine and Caroline Springs, allowing the Ballarat and Geelong lines to be separated from the Melton Line across this corridor. Then the pre-existing track between Sunshine and Melton will be electrified, with Melton's terminating platforms that are being constructed as part of the under construction level crossing removal being the ones that will be electrified. It may also include new stations at Deer Park West, Mount Atkinson and Thornhill Road. I decided to call the Thornhill Road station Thornhill Station. It will also involve Ardea, Deer Park, Caroline Springs, Rockbank, Cobblebank, and the new stations no longer seeing V-Line trains stopping there. Due to the relatively minor scope of this project, it could be completed on time for the Sunshine Super Hub project and open in 2030, but could be a little later. Along with West Tarneit Station, it is likely that a few new stations will come to the Geelong line. Those stations are at Truganina, Sawyers Road, and Black Forest Road. The Black Forest Road station might be called Black Forest Station, but the Sawyers Road station being called South Tarneit Station was the best guess name I could come up with. Those stations could come at any point in the 10 years, but likely sooner rather than later. Finally, the Western Rail Plan includes the construction of a line from Werribee to Wyndon Vale. While an electrification between Deer Park West and Wyndon Vale may be more useful, it's a lot more expensive and likely won't happen within 10 years. An extension from Werribee to Wyndon Vale may happen, with the new electrified line also stopping at Black Forest. This is the least likely part of the Western Rail Plan to happen that made it onto this map, but it still very much might. Now we move on to more speculative projects, starting with the one you all really noticed at the start. The Mildura Line. Now I know I just made 90% of the viewers who know a lot about these projects roll their eyes. This version of the Mildura Line could open within 10 years. A standard gauge line exists between Maryborough and Mildura, and if you remember from the SRL, that's incompatible with most of the rest of the network, including V-Line's Maryborough line. But it does mean you could run a train back and forth between Maryborough and Mildura. With some relatively cheap track work and some station restorations, you could make it so that a gauge-converted train could run 3 services per week to and from Mildura. A second train could raise it to 6 services per direction per week. This would make it the lowest frequency on the Victorian network outside of the Overland, but if it is timed with the Maryborough Line trains, it could be somewhat usable service. Seeing as the plan I'm basing this off, it has existed since 2012 and hasn't been acted on, a timeline is non-existent, but it could happen within the next 10 years. Fine, I'll do the City Loop reconfiguration now. Broadmeadows route. The City Loop reconfiguration is a project designed to turn the Caulfield and Northern City Loop tunnels into a double-track through line that can be used by the Frankston and Craigieburn lines to through-run with each other. This would leave the Northern and Caulfield tracks along the Flinders Street Viaduct for the Upfield and Glen Waverley lines to through run with each other. The lines that go through Camberwell and Clifton Hill would be unaffected. It involves only 2 minor tunnels to be constructed, one from the Northern Tunnel to Richmond, and one from the Caulfield Tunnel to North Melbourne. It would take less than a year to construct, but that would be a very disruptive year, and thus the project got delayed and delayed. This project was originally part of the Metro Tunnel project, but got delayed to immediately after the Metro Tunnel was finished, and is now in a limbo. A completion date is unknown, but seeing it as we have 10 years, it will likely be done eventually. Something else you may have noticed is that the Upfield and Craigieburn lines have shifted slightly, besides changing colour. This is due to a project called the Somerton Rail Link. This is an extension of the Upfield line to Roxburgh Park on the Craigieburn line. This would allow V-Line, Seymour and Shepparton lines to run via Upfield instead of Broadmeadows, allowing for a faster trip out of the city. It would also likely include a new station in Campbellfield. It is almost always paired with the Wallen electrification, because terminating both Upfield and Broadmeadows route trains at Craigieburn would be congested. The Wallen electrification would involve electrifying the Seymour line to Wallen. Upfield trains would be extended to Wallen, while Broadmeadows route trains would continue terminating at Craigieburn. This would involve 2 new stations, a restoration of Beveridge Station and a new one at Lockerbie. Both halves of the Somerton Rail Link project have not been committed to like any of these projects. Tell you what, I'm going to stop saying I can't date this, because all of these are small projects that could happen from now on. Speaking of small, Harcourt Station on the Bendigo line could reopen. That's all I have to say on that one. Final project, the Clyde extension. The Cranbourne line could be extended to Clyde using a pre-existing corridor. This would involve 2 new stations at Cranbourne East, which will likely be named East Cranbourne Station for convention's sake, and Clyde, and also a new station in Dandenong South. But there's one more thing I was advised to put on my map by the people who I consulted when designing this. An extension of the Walhalla Goldfields line to Erica. Otherwise, I've decided not to include any changes to the heritage rail networks. That's it for the list of projects this map contains. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you in the next one.